Hey guys, welcome to Rosie's Dessert Spot. In this tutorial I'll be demonstrating how to create this Grinch cake. This is a sponsored collaboration video with Universal Pictures Australia promoting the Grinch new movie that's coming out. This is a 12-inch cake board and I've applied an 8-inch cake on top, and I actually switched later on to a 16-inch size cake board, so the bigger the better for this project because you do need some space for a scarf too. I have one 8-inch that I cut in half and stacked together. On the other side I've added another 8-inch, but I've cut a bit of an eye shape out of it so that I could join the two together. Use that eye shape to mark where you need to cut on the second half of the cake so it's the same, and then stick it on with some frosting. I'll have a link in the description box below where you can find the buttercream frosting that I use. It's been mixed in with some ganache as well. I'm kind of building more or less what I think the shape of his head will be, so I have a cake right in the center where his nose kind of bulges up a bit. So the middle of his face, you might notice, is a bit bulgy. And then once you have the general shape, take a carving knife or a regular knife as I have here and just start carving away at the cake. The slower the better. You might struggle to add cake on afterwards, so it's easy just to take off little by little rather than have to add on later. Round the corners if you can, just to make him look a bit neater. And I've also carved out two sections for his eyes, so little craters on either side, and then making sure to keep that nose bridge between the eyes nice and tall. Smush it down a little bit with your fingers to give it more of a shape. And I noticed the side of his face wasn't quite wide enough, so I've just added on some more cake here. Do not throw away that scrap cake that you're cutting off, it will come in handy. You can also make cake pops and fill in any areas that need filling in with some cake pop batter. That's the side of his face that I'm carving out. His cheeks tend to be a little bit wide, so keep that consistent through the cake as well. Once the general shape is done, your next step is to cut away any corners, so just rounding everything off. Here I've gone in with some cake pop batter to fill in any large spaces that I needed to. This is hands-on work, guys, so you will want to make sure you clean your hands for this, but use your hands, it is the easiest way to do it. On goes the crumb coat. So now I am creating a thin layer all around the cake, trapping in any crumbs. Fill in the eye pockets as well, and make sure that it's shaped to the eye shape. Otherwise you might fill it in with buttercream and then you kind of lose that crevice that you made. Once it's all smooth, pop it into the fridge for at least 20 minutes to set, and then go on with the second layer. This will be your final layer of frosting. Smooth it down with your spatula. Once it's nice and smooth, you can pop on your fondant. Pop that back into the fridge in the meantime though, so it does have time to set. That'll take about 20 minutes or so. In the meantime, we'll take some green fondant, roll that out with some cornstarch so it doesn't stick to the countertop. It's about 3mm in thickness, draping it over the cake, and I've started with the indented section where the eyes are. Smoothing down the top and then moving my way out to the sides. It's not an incredibly tall cake, so it should be pretty easy to smooth down the sides here. Undo the pleats and massage the fondant onto the side of the cake. Cut away the excess. And make sure to knead that back into a ball and cover airtightly with Glad wrap. Got a fondant smoother just going around the sides. And because it's not a straight cake, what you can do, and it's a really neat trick, take some of that fondant, roll it into a ball, and then use that as a smoother. It creates a much nicer finish compared to what a regular fondant smoother can do. I'm going to tape some fondant on the very sides of the cake, because you can see through to the ganache. End up cutting it a little bit too close, but this is a really easy fix. Now to create the eyes. I have some white fondant and I've shaped them with my hands, making one section rounded and the other section flat. Stick it into the crevice at the very bottom with a little bit of water, and then do the exact same thing with a green piece of fondant, and this will become our eyelid. Massage it at the very edge so that it kind of blends in with the rest of the cake. And then we're moving on to his iris and his pupils. He's got dark green eyes, so I've got some dark green fondant cutting at his pupils with a 1M piping tip. Then use any other tip like a star tip or a 104 tip, for example, to cut out his pupils. Stick those together with a little bit of water. If you have cornstarch, no stress, that can come off with a little bit of water. So I've taken a very, very damp brush. It's almost completely dry, and I've just dabbed off the powder. Cut it to size so that it fits on the eyeball, just under the eyelid. And then stick on his nose, which is a green ball of fondant. I've used the back of my brush to indent his nostrils. Very, very easy to do. And then I've got this little line that connects his nose to his mouth. I've gone off a photo of him on Google. This is the indent that he had. In goes the indents for his mouth as well, just as a really good guide, rough guide for us to follow. Makes it a lot easier. And I smooth down any lines that I create with my finger so that it's not so harsh. Rolling out logs with a fondant smoother, make sure that it's all the same thickness all the way around. Stick the pink thread into that crevice that you made for his mouth, and then gently indent it into that crevice. Now for his fur. I've used a scalpel tool of sorts. It comes in a pack of about 6 different fondant decorating tools. You can also use a handle of a teaspoon or a spoon to create those indents. I'll have a list of all the tools I've used in the description box below if you guys are wondering. I've also added some texture onto his eyelids as well, make it look a little bit more realistic. Kind of follow the shape where you think the eyeball would naturally go. To create his eyebrows, I have a log of fondant in dark green, and I'm using that scalpel kind of tool again to create hairs. Stick it on with a little bit of water, and do the same for the other side. You kind of want to go really thin on the edges so that some hair comes undone and it looks more realistic. I have some green and some darker green edible powder that I've used. I've got a very large brush and it's just going to give it an overall shade in the light green. Coming up from the edges, and then I've used a darker green and a much smaller brush to give highlight to the areas where there would normally be shadow. So anything that you've popped on him that is 3D and not flat, that's where you'll still want to aim. And also along any indented lines. Under his nose, eyebrows and eyes. I also want him to look a little bit more shaded just under the eyes as he does in his photos too. I've used a fluffy brush just to give it a bit more of a blended look, kind of like as if you were applying a real makeup. To create his hair, I use the same method as the eyebrow, but this time I made sure to have lots of loose hair coming undone, so just cut along the edges to make those a little bit more realistic. Keep the very end nice and thick and throughout the middle as well, because you'll want it to be thick enough for your skewer to fit through without it coming through the fondant. So you can't see it through the fondant. Let it dry overnight and then pop it into the top of his head. For his scarf, I have white fondant, rolled it out to about 3 mm in thickness and cut a long rectangle. And then I use the width of my ruler to cut out the stripes. Stick those on in stripes, alternating white and red with a little bit of water. And then cut off the excess at either side. And then drape it around his neck where it would normally sit, but give it some life, don't stick it completely flat on him. So raise in areas, pinch it in other areas so it looks a bit more realistic. I cut out 2 other pieces and I've arranged them diagonally on him, and I've folded in at the edges. This makes it look like he's actually wearing the scarf and gives it a bit more life. Cut off the excess at the corner of your cake board. I've also cut some snowflakes with a snowflake plunger cutter. Pop those onto the board to decorate with a little bit of water. And that is how you create a sculpted The Grinch cake. Hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. A lot easier than it looks, trust me. And this video is in collaboration with Universal Pictures Australia, celebrating the arrival of The Grinch coming out on the 29th of November. So today, or Thursday. I really hope you guys give it a go, and if you do tag me on your post with hashtag #RosieSetSpot so I can see it as well. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys again next week. If you haven't subscribed, don't forget to do so. We upload a new video every Tuesday. Bye for now.